begin and symbol. Okay, I'm just giving one more chance. So I'm expecting the answer from you guys on Monday. Okay, so in case if you explode and if you're not understanding, feel free to let me know. I want at least you guys to explore by yourself, try it. Now, it's not mandatory that you might understand it. Even while exploring that, you might get confused. If you get confused, just come back and ask, I tried, I explored this part, but I got confused here. Then when I will tell you the solution, then you will understand exactly where you were lagging. In this way, things will be easy for both the end. You will also learn by your own, and even you will understand how to learn certain things by your own, how to understand the things. Okay, this practice we will get. So let's see, one more day chance, like you have 2 days, today and tomorrow. And Monday, I just want the answer from few of you regarding begin and the symbol. Yeah. So if you remember yesterday, we have created one function, right? So suppose I want to create one more function here, same addition function I want to repeat. So what I will do, first I need to create one JavaScript file, okay, with some name, whatever name you want to give for your file, you can give something like add.js. Now, if I want to create a function, can you guys tell me how can I create the function?
Function keyword, function name.
First, we have to start with function keyword. Then function name, whatever name you want, you can give. Okay. Suppose I am giving here fn add. Then open parenthesis, close parenthesis. Then open curly brace, close curly brace. If you want to add space here, add, or else if you don't want to add, just skip it. Okay. Now this is how we create the function. Now what do we call to this one? What do we call to this one? This is function definition. We call this part as a function definition. Okay, function definition. Now inside this curly braces, what we need to write? We need to write our code. Here we need to write our code. Can you guys tell me what do we call to this area which is in between this curly braces?
Function body.
Function
Body.
Okay. Apart from that, I have told you one term, right? What we will call to this term? Yes.
Implementation. Function implementation.
Function scope. Okay. Function scope starts here. Function stops end here. Okay. So this entire is like your function scope. Okay. Now inside this, we can add our implementation. We can write our code. We can write our statement, or we can write our instruction. You use word instruction, statement, or code. All are same. Now here, I want two variables. I just want to create two variables. So var, like I'm giving some name, something like A. I'm storing some value here, 100. Var B equals to 200. Now here I'm just writing simple logic to add these values, something like A plus B. A plus B means internally it will do 100 plus 200 only. Then it will generate some result, right? That result I want to store in another variable, something like var r. Now, whatever result got generated, that I want to print in my console. So simply I will use here something called console.log. And here I will pass r. Now what I did, I just created one function. I defined one function. Now, if I run my JavaScript file, will this function gets executed? If I run my JavaScript file, will this function gets executed? No, it won't get executed, right? If you want to execute this function, what you need to do? You have to call this function like this. This is called function call. Function call. This is your function call. Okay, this is function definition. In function definition, we will create the function. If you want to execute that function, you have to call that function. Now, if you run your file, Now you will get the result. I got the result 30. Suppose this function I am calling one more time. One more time. Now, how many times this function will execute now? How many times this function will execute?
3 times.
3 times. How many times you will call? That many times that function will execute. Now see, here I will get 300, 300, 300. But there is one problem, right? If I am calling this function 3 times it is giving me same result. 300, 300, 300. I don't want like that. First time, whenever I call this function, I want to add 100 plus 200. Whenever I call this function second time, I want to add 50 plus 50. Third time, whenever I call, I want to add here something like 30 plus 70 or 30 plus something like 60. It means whenever I call this function, I want to add different numbers. Sometimes I want to add 100 plus 200, sometimes 50 plus 50, sometimes 30 plus 60. I want like this. Now, in this case, what can we do? Anybody have any kind of idea? In this case, what we need to do?
We should declare the parameters.
Yes. So basically, we have to tell to this function, right? To this function, we have to tell ki this now I am calling you. Now you add 100 to 100. Second time, if you are calling same function, again you have to tell to this function. Okay, now you add 50 plus 50. It means somehow you have to give some input to this function. You have to give some input to that function. Then that function will take your input. Based on your input, it will do the addition. So now the question is, how can we give the input to the functions? How to give input to the functions? So to give the input to the functions, we are going to use function parameter and function argument concept. So using function parameter and function argument, we can give input to the functions. We can give input to the functions. Now, what are these function parameter and function arguments? Let's try to understand. So before I explain what are function parameters and function arguments, anybody have any kind of knowledge on this? And would you like to express? Okay, first let's try to understand what are function parameters. Yeah. Anybody knows what are function parameters?
Within the declaration of the function, whatever the parameters we are declaring, those are we called as a function parameters.
Okay. Input given to the function. Okay. Anything else? Okay. So let me explain you what are function parameters. Function parameters are nothing but they are the variables. Function parameters are simple variables which we pass in the parenthesis while defining the function. What are function parameters? Function parameters are simple variables, okay, which holds some information, and function parameters are passed in the parenthesis while defining the function. What are function parameters? Function parameters are simple variables. That's it. Apart from that, nothing. Suppose here I am creating one function, something like this, function fn. This is my function. Let's assume this is my function. Now, while defining the function, inside this parenthesis, we can pass some variables. Suppose I am passing here name. This is variable, just variable, without using that scope statement, var statement. Just pass the variable name. You can pass any number of variable. If you want to pass one more variable, just add comma and pass another variable, CT. If you want to add one more variable, just add comma and pass one more variable, something like ID. Now, what are these names, CT and ID? They are variables which we are passing in parenthesis. If any variables, if you are passing inside this parenthesis, then those variables are called function parameters. These are called function parameters. Function parameters. How many parameters we can pass inside the function means any number of parameters you can pass. We don't have any kind of limit. You can pass any number of function parameters. You can pass 1 parameter, 2 parameter, 3 parameter, 100 parameter, depending upon your requirement. Or you can skip the parameters also. If you don't want to pass any parameter, don't pass any parameters. Now, what is the use of these parameters? These parameters are going to hold some information, nothing but they are going to store some information. Now, if you want to store some information here, then you need to pass some information here, right? So how can we pass the information to the parameters? Means using arguments, using function arguments. So using function arguments, we can pass or store the data in the function parameter. Function arguments are the actual data which we pass while calling the function, Function arguments are the actual data which we pass while calling the function. It means what? Now here I have defined this function. Now I want to call this function. So here I will call this function like this, fn. This is how I call the function. Now this function is taking 3 parameters, name, CT and ID. Now you have to pass 3 arguments inside this parenthesis. I am passing here something like Kabir. CT I am passing like Delhi. Some ID I am passing like 101. So how many arguments I am passing? I am passing 3 arguments. Kabir, Delhi and 101. How to differentiate your arguments? Using comma. Now this Kabir will go and store inside this name. Delhi will store inside CT. 101 will store inside ID. So how many parameters you are passing? That many arguments you have to pass. Now once this entire data is stored inside this parameter, then this data you can utilize inside your function. That's it. So these are function parameters. These are function arguments. In your interviews, they will ask, what is the function parameter? What are function arguments? Lot of people will get confused here. Instead of explaining parameter, they will explain argument. Instead of explaining argument, they will explain parameter. So remember, parameters are always variables. They are always passed in the function definition. Arguments are like actual data. They are actual data which are always passed while calling the function. Sometimes in your interviews, they will ask, what is the difference between parameters and arguments? Then you have to say parameters are variables, arguments are actual data. Parameters are passed while defining the function. Arguments are passed while calling the function. These are the two differences you have to mention for parameter and arguments. Now, what is the use of parameters and arguments? Using parameters and arguments, we can pass some dynamic data or some input to our functions. Using parameter and arguments, we can pass some dynamic data to function or some input to our functions. Now here I want to create one more file, something called addparam .js, nothing but add parameters, something like that. So here I am creating one function add params. This is simple function. Now inside this function, I am taking two parameters, something like I am taking x comma y. Now x is one parameter, y is another parameter. Here I am creating two variables, var a, var b, two variables. Now I will call this function. Whenever I am calling this function, I need to pass arguments now. How many arguments I need to pass? I have two parameters, so I need to pass two arguments. So I am passing here 100, 200. Now this 100 will store in x. This 200 will store in y. They will store in this sequence only. First argument will store in first parameter. Second argument will store in the second parameter. Now, this data, whatever data you have in X and whatever data you have in Y, that data I want to copy in A. X data I want to copy in A, Y data I want to copy in B. How to copy means simply we have to say A equals to X. Now, whenever you say A equals to X, the data of X will be copied into A. Data of X will be copied into A. Nothing but data will pass from right to left. Right to left. Now I want to copy y value into the b. So simply I will say b equals to y. Now here I will create one more variable var result equals to a plus b I will do. And finally I will console.log that result. Now, if I call this add params 100, 200, I should get the result. So let me clear this terminal. Node add param. Click on enter. Now see, I got 300. Now I will call one more time the function, but with different values. Here I will pass 50, 50. Save it, come back here, again execute it. I got 100. Now we are calling same function, but we are passing different inputs. One more time I will call. This time I will pass here something like 30, 50. Here you got the 80. So first time you got 300, then 100, then 80. So basically what you are doing, you are passing some input. Based on that input, you are just performing some operation. So here, this is function argument. This is your function parameter. These are function parameter. These are function variables. We are going to call this as a variables. This we are going to call as a parameters. Internally, parameters also variables only, but they gave just one special name called parameters because we are passing inside this parenthesis. Understood what are function parameters and function arguments? Is it clear for everyone? Okay, as of now, I am taking very small examples like addition just to make you understand the concept. Okay, my intention is concept should be clear. Once the concepts are clear, then we can use different use cases at different stages. Okay, now if I want to give some input to the function, we are using parameter and argument concept. Okay, we are using parameter and argument concept. In the same way, can I expect some output from the function? Can I expect some output from the function? If we are giving some input to the function, we can expect some output also from function. Function should return us some output. If you are giving some input, I want my function should return me some output. So we can return some output, or we can return some data from the function using return statement. Something called using return statement. Okay, as of now here we are not returning anything, we are just printing it. I don't want to print, I want to return this output. Whenever I call this function should return me something. This function should return some value. So in that case, we will be using something called return statement. So how to use this return statement? Let me explain you. So I'm just copying the same example here and pasting here. Now I don't want to print this value in my console like this. I don't want to print the console. I want this value should be returned from this function. Whenever I call this function, I should get the result. So for that, what we will do at the last line, we will add one return statement. And what you want to return? I want to return whatever data stored in this variable. So simply I will write here result. So whatever data you have stored here, that data will be returned. It means whenever you call this function, now this function is returning something to you. If this function is returning something to you, then we have to catch that data in one variable. I'm saying here something called first result, some variable name. Now this add params will return some result. That result we are storing here. In the same way, if I call second time this function, again this function will return some result. Again that result I need to store in another variable, something like second result. Here third result, where something like third result. You can take any name as a variable. I am taking first, second, third. You can take anything. Now here we are not printing anything. Whenever we call this function is returning something to us. Whatever it is returning, that we are storing in one variable. Now if I execute this function, do you think that output will print here in the console? If I run this file, will output print in this console? Output will not print in the console. Just check here. Node written. Now see, there is no output printed. Now why output is not printing? Because we are not using any console.log here. We are not using any console.log. If you want to print whatever data you have stored in this first result, simply here you can add console.log and you can pass your first result. Here also console.log. We can pass here second result. Here also console.log. Here third result. Now clear it. Pass it. Now see, node written, we are getting the result. Now these results are because of this console. Console 1, console 2, console 3. So instead of printing the result inside the function, we are trying to print the result outside the function. outside the function. So remember, return statement should be last line inside your function. After return statement, whatever you will write here, whatever you will write, that code will not be executed. These lines will never be executed. So return should be the last line in your function. After return, the execution of your function will be stopped. Once return is encountered, the execution of your function will be stopped. So remember, return should be the last line. It should be the last line in your function. Okay, so this is your return statement. So using return statement, we can give some output from function. Using arguments and parameters, we can give some input to the functions. So here till now, we have used something called console.log, right? I told you I will explain console.log after some time, on the first day or on the second day. Now, by seeing this log, can you guys tell me what is this log? By seeing this log, what do you feel? What is this log? What is this log?
It is a function.
Yes, it is a function. It is a predefined function. Predefined function means the functions which are not developed by us. Functions which are developed by JavaScript. We didn't develop that function. We did not wrote or we did not write the logic to develop that function. Someone else developed that function. We are just using that function. Using that function. So log is a predefined function. What is console here? Now you won't understand what is console. We will explore, I will explain about console after few sessions. I will explain the concept, then again I will ask the same question. You will give the answer. So today, how you gave the answer, log is a function. In the same way, after some sessions, maybe after 1 or 2 sessions, you will only give the answer what is console. Okay, as of now, you just remember this topic, log. Log is a function. What is console? We will explore after some time. Okay. Now, let's try to understand one more function called anonymous function. Anybody knows what do you mean by anonymous function?
The function which doesn't have a name.
Yes. Any function which doesn't have a name are called anonymous function. Any function which does not or which doesn't contain any name, or any function which does not have any name are called anonymous function. It means if you want to create any anonymous function, simply you have to do like this. Function directly open and close parenthesis, open curly brace, close curly brace. This is your anonymous function. These are anonymous function. Here you can write whatever logic you want. Okay, anonymous functions we can store in one variables. Anonymous functions we can store in the variables like this. We can create variable like this, where my function. This is simple variable. To this variable, we can assign one anonymous function. Here we can write some logic and close the function. If you want to call this function, now we don't have any name for this function, so we cannot call. So in this case, what we will do, we will call this function using this variable name. So here I will say my function. If I say my function, this function will be called. So any function which doesn't have name, they are called anonymous function. And anonymous functions we can assign to some variables. Or anonymous function we can pass as an argument to another function. Anonymous functions can be passed as an argument to another function. So what is the meaning of this? Let's try to understand. Suppose I created one function here. Function something like f1. And inside this function, let's assume we wrote some logic. Here. Now this function is taking one parameter, something called fn, some parameter name fn. Now, if I want to execute this function, what I need to do? I need to call this function. Now, this function is taking one parameter. It means I need to pass one argument. So, as an argument, you can pass anything. You can pass string data like this, or you can pass number like this, or you can pass one Boolean value like this, or you can pass null, or you can pass undefined. Whatever you want, you can pass. In the same way, we can pass one anonymous function also. And inside this function, we can write some logic. Now, whenever you call f1, this function will go and store inside this fn. It will go and store in this fn. And this function you can call here, wherever you want, you can call using parameter name like this. You can call using parameter name. So if you are calling here this using parameter name as a function, internally it will call this function. So anonymous functions you can assign to variable like this, or you can pass to any other function as an argument. You can pass as a argument to any function. Any function, it's a normal function or anonymous function. If you are passing as an argument, then this function is called callback function. Now we can call this function as a callback function also. We can call this as a callback function also. Any function, it can be anonymous function or it can be normal function. If you are passing as an argument, then that argumented function is called callback function. They are called callback function in the JavaScript. What is callback function? Any function, it can be normal function or anonymous function. Any function which is passed as an argument, those functions, those argumented functions are called callback functions. Okay. So something like this. Callback function can be of any type. You can define one anonymous function like this function f1. Inside that you can take variable fn or parameter fn. You can call this f1 function and you can pass one function here, one anonymous function as an argument. Now this is called, in this case, this is called callback function because you are passing as an argument. You can go with this approach, or else we can do like this. We can define two functions. Function F1. Okay, I can have one more function, something like F2. Okay, I have function F1, I have function F2. I'm calling F2 here. And to this F2, I am passing F1. I have to just pass F1. That's it. Now here F2 will take one parameter, maybe like Fn. Now here we are passing normal function as a argument. Here now F1. F1 is called callback function. In this case, F1 is called callback function. So to this F2, we are passing F1 as an argument. Here, this function and this function, both are called callback functions. Callback functions. Okay. So callback function, anonymous function, returned function, parameterized function, normal function. This many terms we have. So let's see here example of anonymous function. Okay, what are anonymous function? Any function which doesn't have any name. So here I am simply writing console.log. Here I am just adding something like I am anonymous function. Now this function doesn't have any name. We have to assign to one variable like var my fn. That's it. We have to assign to one variable. Now if you want to call this function, what you need to do, simply you have to say my fn like this. Now if you execute it, node, now see, I got here, I am anonymous function. It means this function got executed. This function got executed. Now we can have callback function also. So here I am creating one function F1. I'm saying console.log. Here I'm simply printing F1. This F1, let's consider taking one parameter, that is F. Now while calling this F1, I can pass one anonymous function here. Simply I will say in console.log anonymous function. Now how to call this function? This function will go and store inside this parameter. If you want to call this function, simply here you can call like this. How many times you want, that many times you can call. Now if you go back here and if you execute it, node callback. Now see, first F1 printed, then you called F. It will go to the F. It will see what you are storing in the F. You are storing one function. It will call this function. Again, console is printed. You are calling one more time. Again, console is printed. Okay. Or else we can go with one more approach. I can create one more here. Callback 1.js. I can create function F1. I can simply say here console.log of F1. I can have one more function F2, which will take one parameter called F. And here simply I will add console.log of F2. And here I will call this F like this. Now I need here F2. Okay, I just want to add F2. Now this F2 I will call. Now to this F2, now F2 is taking one parameter. I need to pass one argument. So I will pass this F1. Again, if I execute here, node callback 1. Now see, here I got F2, F1, F1. Because this will print console F2. You called F is nothing but it will call F1. F1 will be printed. Again, you call F, it will call F1. Again, F1 is printed. So, point what I wanted to explain is, to our function call, we can pass normal function as an argument like this, or you can pass one callback function also. You can pass one anonymous function also. So if you are passing anonymous function or normal function as an argument, then this argumented function is called callback function. Here it is called callback function. In this case, F1 is also called callback function because F1 also you are passing as an argument. F1 is a callback function. Here, this anonymous function is also called callback function. When it is called callback function, only if you pass as an argument. If you are not passing as an argument, then it is not called callback function. Then it is not called callback function. Okay. So are you guys clear with all these terms? So when it comes to function, we have normal function. We have parameterized function. Functions which take parameterize. Returned function. Functions which will return. Anonymous function. Functions without name. Callback function. Functions which are passed as argument. Apart from this, we have some more arrow function. We have higher order function. So what is arrow function? Higher order function, expression, or arrow function, higher order function. This topic we will learn after few sessions, in some other sessions. As of now, we are good with these topics. Yeah, if you define two parameters and if you pass one argument, first argument, that argument will store in the first parameter. That's it. Suppose you created two functions here, function here, function F1. You are passing two parameters, x comma y. Now here I am trying to print the values of x comma y. Now if I call this F1 and if I pass only one argument, here I am passing two parameters, but here I am passing only one argument. In this case, what happens? This argument, first argument, will store in the first parameter. So x will print 101. Now inside y, we are not storing anything. If you are not storing anything, by default, a special value will be stored in the y that is undefined. If you create variable and if you are not storing any data in that, then JavaScript will store one special value inside that variable that is undefined. So it will print 101, comma undefined. Okay. So this is how your functions are going to work. So in the next session, we are going to explore one more most important topic in your entire MERN stack. Function is one of the important topic. Apart from that, there are two more topics which are very, 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 very important. The next topic is object. And after that, array. These topics are very, 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 very important. You have to understand at any cost. These three topics are very, very important. Functions, objects, arrays. Because you are going to encounter this topic at every stage from here. In JavaScript, we are going to encounter a lot of time. In React, you will encounter. In Node, you will encounter. In MongoDB also, you will encounter these three topics. So these three topics are like base for your entire MERN stack, entire UI full stack. At any cost, you have to understand these topics. If you are not clear with these topics, means coming topics will show like it will be very difficult for us to understand. So today we have completed function topic. In the next session, we will explore object topic. And then next session, we will explore array concept. Array might take 2 days. Object might take 1 day and 1 more day. We will combine all this concept. The more stronger you are with this three concept, the more easy the React will be. The more easy Node.js, MongoDB will be. So make sure you are very good with these concepts, and all these concepts I am covering in the demo sessions only. So you should feel easy to understand all these topics. Yeah, so that's all guys for today's session. So we will join on Monday at the same time. Next session will be on Monday. And guys, I don't have I'm not able to take today's session from 10 to 11. I have some office meetings, so which was not scheduled, but suddenly I got mail in the morning. So I have the meeting at 10:30 only. So I will be not able to take the session. Okay, 10 to 11 wala.
Please share the syllabus.
Okay, let me
link.
see. In group also I will send. Okay, I forgot to send in the group. I will send now itself. I will send in the group as well. Yeah, that's all guys. If you don't have any doubts, yeah, we can drop. Let's meet on Monday and let's explore next two topics which are very, very, very important.